Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of In the Studio. I'm your host, Lynn Weaver. The program is brought to you by Davis Media Access and broadcasts on Davis Community Television. That's Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T UVerse Menu 99. We're also online at dctv.davismedia.org. Today we will revisit a topic that we covered a while ago, and this is the Yolo County Neighborhood Court. We were interested in finding out the latest activities of this successful program initiated by the Yolo County District Attorney Office. With me is Chris Bulkeley, Deputy District Attorney for the Yolo County Court, and he will give us an update on some of the new extraordinary things that are happening there. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
We also have Catherine Stobie. She is a panelist on the court, and she's also a recent graduate of UC Davis, and we'll hear more from you about how you got involved in this program. And finally,
Jonathan Baldauf.
Thank you. And he's also, I suppose he's a facilitator, I'm not sure. We'll hear more about this. And he's also a UC Davis graduate, aren't you?
A law student at UC Davis.
Law student at UC
Yes.
Davis. Welcome all. Thank you very much for your time here. Well, I'm going to start with Chris. And Chris, you've got the job of reminding our viewers what the neighborhood court is, and in terms of the goals and the programs and how it operates. Could you kindly do this for us?
I can.
Good.
Neighborhood Court is a pre-charging diversion program. We're using restorative justice. It's a non-punitive way of resolving crime. We have volunteers participating in that. They represent the community. And we have the offender come in and have a conference with the panel, and they go through a three-step process, which is focusing on what is the harm from the criminal conduct. We don't determine guilt or innocence. People who are participating are volunteering to participate, and they're acknowledging their wrongdoing when they do this. And they have a discussion about what is the harm from their conduct, and then how do they make things right as best as possible, and how will they avoid this conduct in the future. And out of that conference comes an agreement, and when they complete that agreement, the case is closed, and they never go to criminal court.
It's interesting. So could you tell us how it differs from the traditional court of law, criminal court? I know it's very complicated, but just give us an idea of how it differs.
The criminal court is focused on the defendant and the defendant's rights and guilt and innocence, and then it's focusing on sentencing. Neighborhood court, we're focusing on the victim or the community. And then we're focusing on what is the harm from the criminal conduct and how do you make things right. To participate, again, the offender, the person who committed the crime, has admitted what they've done. And so we've gotten beyond that step. We've gotten beyond focusing on the right to an attorney, the right to a speedy trial, all these different things, and focusing on what is the conduct and how do you make things right.
Yes, and it, in a way, focuses more on the victim rather than the offender.
We'll focus on the victim when we have a direct victim case, and our panelists represent the community. So when we have a case like a drunk in public, a public urination, those types of cases, the community is represented by the panelists.
And how are they referred? Not all cases are referred to the neighborhood court, are they?
We have certain types of offenses. We have a list on our website, which is yoloda.org. And those offenses are referred to myself. I determine eligibility. Right now it's a first offender program, which means they can't have a misdemeanor or felony conviction. And when they meet those criteria, they are offered the opportunity to participate in this program.
This is a relatively new program at Yolo County, isn't it?
We initiated, our first conferences were in June of last year. And we had 153 offenders go through conferencing.
153 offenders?
153.
That's a lot.
And
Yeah.
we'll probably have over 50 going through by the end of this month. So in 2 months, we'll have 1/3 of the total we did last year.
That's fabulous,
so we-
yes.
We have expanded the types of crimes that we're including in neighborhood court. When we first started, we didn't have direct victim crimes. So if a person, for example, stole your bicycle, we didn't include that because we had a direct victim as an individual. We're looking at community crimes when we first started. So now we're doing victim crimes. We're doing batteries. We've actually had a resisting arrest case that we've gone through, actually 2 of those so far, where there's a direct victim. We've also moved to having victims come in and participate in the conferencing. We've done 3 of those, and we're refining that process to improve it. As you indicated, it's a new program. There's only 2 counties in the state of California that are using restorative justice in adult offenses like this.
And restorative justice is another name for neighborhood court in a way, isn't it?
To a extent, we're applying restorative justice in our conferences, and that's the way we're progressing with that.
And I understand you're expanding.
We're expanding into West Sacramento this year, and I'm actually doing a presentation tonight with some other people about restorative justice in West Sacramento. And
So this is a dry run for you, isn't it?
a lot of dry runs in Davis, so it'll probably be a different batch of people going through the process. Most of the offenders or people who broke the law that commit these types of offenses are college age,
I
or
see.
or mid-20s.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of older people in this program. We've had some. We've had some that are older than me. I'm not going to state my age.
No need to.
But we do have
Does
others.
it mean that older people are wiser?
They may not be first offenders.
I see.
We're also seeing in Davis a lot of alcohol involvement in the offenses, and that's primarily the college age group or mid-20s.
Relaxing, so to speak.
Relaxing, so to speak.
Thank you, Chris. Catherine, I'm very curious about your involvement, but before you tell us how you got involved in the neighborhood court, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm a recent graduate, you just said, and I've been living in Davis since I was a freshman, so over 4 years now. And yeah, I heard about neighborhood court a few months ago. I literally was between classes and was reading the Aggie, our newspaper, our school
Was it
newspaper.
advertised in the Aggie?
I think, yeah, it was.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's good. That's
yeah,
good,
it was
yes.
great. And so it just kind of random, and I've been interested in law, and so I thought it would be an interesting thing to be a part of. And then actually after looking into it, I looked into the restorative justice aspect of it that Chris was talking about, and I just thought that was so interesting and how it's been used in all these different
Yes.
counties, and
Yes.
New Zealand's used it, and I don't know, I just
It's
thought it was
fascinating,
a really
yes.
fascinating kind of movement, and I
Yes.
just sort of wanted to be a part of that movement. So,
What did you study at UC Davis? What was your major?
emphasis in U.S. history.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So what do you do on the court?
So I serve as a panelist. So I
Can you explain a little bit what this is?
Sure, yeah. So usually there's a panel about, there's two to three sometimes of community members, and we represent, all ages of the Davis community,
Yes.
from students to
And Woodland,
elderly.
all of Yolo County, right?
It's been
It's only Davis right now.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
only Davis right now. Okay.
It only works to represent the community if you live in that community. So for a Davis resident, they need to live in Davis for 3 years. They need to know their town so they can represent the town.
It makes sense.
And for
Yeah.
students, we're not looking for freshmen or sophomores. We're looking for people who've lived in the community for a year, outside of the dorms in town,
Yes.
before they participate in the process.
I see. So they are more cognizant of how to listen and what the crimes may be.
They're much more experienced. It's not so much listening; it's the life experiences of. We commonly say freshmen don't know anything.
to go past the campus.
and they're just learning how the university works. It's a new experience for them. They're living in the dorms, and then the year after that, they're moving out of the dorms. They're living on their own for the first time as residents in houses or apartments, and they could be interspersed with other residents who aren't students. So they're learning how to adapt and how that experience works.
It makes total sense. And Catherine, so you are, so are you? What are you required to do?
So essentially, we, as a community, we hear the story from their point of view.
The offense.
The offender's point of view, yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Or the offender's point of view. Okay.
Because sometimes...
So I stole a bicycle, why did I do that?
Right, and you get to hear kind of, sometimes we clarify in the beginning too, so, we'll ask if, often it's alcohol related, so we'll ask if, in the past, have you had any problems with alcohol before, and kind of try to sort of get to the root of maybe why they're doing things, so we can maybe offer some advice for, getting
For
alcohol-related rehab or something,
yes.
on campus. And
That's very interesting. How many hours a week do you dedicate to the court, or?
I would say about probably twice a month.
Twice a month
yes.
for a whole day, perhaps?
Well, usually since they are students, it's usually at night we do it. It's evenings.
A whole evening.
Yeah, so it'll be a whole evening for a few hours.
What did you? Well, let me go to Jonathan first, and then we'll come back to you. He's been sitting very nicely.
I'm
there.
totally fine.
Jonathan, how did you get involved, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Boise, Idaho. Moved over to Davis to go to law school.
I don't know anyone from Boise, Idaho.
Well, now you do. But came down to Davis to go to law school. And Chris was reaching out to the law school and reaching out to law students and trying to,
UC Davis Law
yes,
School.
Yes, UC Davis Law.
Yes.
And trying to, get us out there and help out with the community. So I emailed him and he brought me on. From there, I went through panelist training, went through a couple panels, and now I'm going through a facilitator training. I'm hoping to...
Can you explain what a facilitator does?
Sure, absolutely. A facilitator, so you have the panel who's representing the community, and of course you have the offender.
And how big is the panel? About?
3 people, usually.
3 people, yes.
So the panelists will talk to the goal is to have them talk to the offender and have them go through exactly what had happened. And my job is just to make sure that conversation goes smoothly. Make sure that we follow the process and make sure that, everything works out and we come to an agreement.
Do you also facilitate some of the conversation that Chris mentioned with the victim?
I haven't.
I'm sorry. With the victim.
I
Yes.
expect I would. I haven't facilitated a victim conference personally, but I expect that as the program grows, that'll be something I'll be doing later down the road.
Can you tell us about something that really stuck in your mind about your participation?
Well, I think really what kind of
people, the synergy, or maybe someone who gets a little rowdy or upset.
It's totally fair. What really sticks out in my mind is we had a panel that involved a victim, and I was on that panel, and was seeing how the victim and the offender both got along, and how they both were able to, they had this unfortunate incident that happened. There was definitely, could have been some bad blood between them, but they both came to the panel, were both willing to share, and seemed like they got a lot out of that. And I really appreciated being a part of that process.
Yes, because it's also very interesting to see how people can be civil and open their minds to what they've done and to listen to the others. I think that's also a very difficult exercise in many cases. You should know, Chris, since you are a lawyer. This is very interesting. Are you planning to continue on this?
Absolutely. I'll be around as long as I'm in Davis, and I plan to,
Oh, that's
be helping
great.
out.
Is there an echelon of can you be promoted as a volunteer in different roles, or?
We have 2 primary roles right now. The first one is panelist. They represent
Yes.
the community, and the other one is facilitator. The panelists, they're training. They spend a Saturday going through training. We ask they observe a conference, and then they have another 3-hour block of training in the evening. We also give them the little book on restorative justice. It's about 60 pages long, and we ask that they read that so they kind of get a better feel for what restorative justice is and the principles that they're going to be applying. The facilitators have an additional day of training. And then the facilitators, we want them to be a panelist twice, so they understand that role. Then they get to co-facilitate for at least 2 conferences, and then we'll evaluate them at the end of that and talk to them and see if they're ready to go on their own. And then we'll have them start doing cases. And then once they've done a number of conferences, we'll look at possibly a victim conference.
Very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about a victim conference that you've had?
We've had a couple of victim conferences, and Catherine and Jonathan have each participated in one of those. The goal was to have the victim participate. The harm to the victim is unique to a victim. You may look at a case and say, well, this is how the victim was harmed. But the victim may have other reasons or thoughts about how the offense injured them. Just to give an example, when I was in law school, I got mugged. And I was in the Army, I've been through Special Forces, and the fact that I got mugged was going to be embarrassing going back to school the next day. But one of the guys was huge. And so I was a little worried about that, but that's a personal harm to me. But luckily for me, one of the security guards in McGeorge drove by, and he couldn't be quiet about on campus about how lucky I was to be alive, because that guy was huge. He could have ripped my head off. So he was my new best friend.
Oh, yes.
So that was a way that being mugged and physically assaulted and my self-perception of myself, I didn't envision that happening to me, was a harm that was unique to me, that other people looking at the offense wouldn't think of that. And so each victim has a unique perspective of...
I was going to say, it's the perception sometimes that is just as important to the way the victim perceives, you know, like the fear, and facts sometimes don't encompass that.
Right.
You said you were in the Special Forces in the Army?
That's a long time ago.
It doesn't matter. Did you enjoy the experience?
It was challenging.
More to the point. Did your experience in the Special Forces give you a better understanding of being a criminal lawyer or in criminal justice?
Not in any way.
It's very interesting. Yes.
The military is a different aspect of life than being a prosecutor. I didn't see a whole lot of carryover.
Didn't he even make you a bit tougher?
It'd be different. Well, I guess. So,
Okay, sorry, I put you on the
that's
spot
okay.
there. Catherine thinks that you're tough.
You're tough.
Okay.
He's the man.
Well, that's a good thing to be, yes, in some cases. What I'm going to ask Jonathan, what kind of law do you see in your future? What would you like to become?
Oh, that's fair. My goal is to practice criminal law on the prosecutor side. So whether that's a state or a county, district attorney's office, that's my end-all, be-all goal. And the nexus between, I also enjoy community building, so the nexus between criminal law and community building that is neighborhood court really calls to me. So.
And do you get the right courses here at UC Davis for that would prepare you for that?
Yeah, the law school is very good about making sure that we have a lot in the way of seminars. We have a lot of policy kind of discussions about what works. Right now, I'm in a criminal justice administration class that really talks about, okay, for example, today's is going to be a discussion on Germany's public defender program and how.
Sorry, what program?
Germany's public defender program.
Oh.
So how German defense varies from American defense. But we went through prosecution in Japan, Germany, and America, and compared those programs so we can get a better view of what works, what could work, what we can try. So
very interesting. Yes. Catherine, do you want to go to law school or?
I do. I'll probably be applying in the fall. But right now I'm working as a research assistant for a law professor. So I'm definitely I haven't let go of that idea.
You haven't decided
but
yet.
I haven't completely decided.
But this is
either.
certainly helpful to you to get a glimpse of what's happening with the criminal justice. Chris, you probably know this better than Jonathan. Is it very difficult to pass the law exams here in California?
It can be challenging for some. It's very stressful, and you spend a whole summer practicing and preparing for that.
Is it a written exam or?
It's 3 days, and you're bringing back bad memories here.
Well, let's drop it then, because it's not really relevant to what we're talking about, but I was curious. I know that New York State is almost impossible as far as getting your certification or whatever.
My understanding is California is one of the more difficult ones.
Okay, there you go. Chris, this is an update on what we talked about the last time, which was really the operations of the court and so on. And we've done a recap, and I think our viewers will be quite clear on what you do. But can you tell me a little bit from the time we left it off to now, what were your key achievements in this program? Just a continuation of what you had started, or the success?
I think one of the key achievements that we had last year was actually having victim conferences and having the victim come in and participate in the process. That's one of the end states we're looking at to try and establish in this program, is to be able to successfully do that and allow the victim to directly control the process to a certain extent about what happens in their case. They have a choice of whether the case goes to neighborhood court. They have a choice to participate.
Oh, that's right. Tell us about that. Not all, I mean, it has to be at the will or the desire of the victim, right?
Yes, and then we're talking about being victim-centric. The victim gets to make that original decision as to whether or not the case will be heard in neighborhood court. The victim then gets to decide if they want to participate or not. In a criminal case, we make a charging decision. It's not the victim's choice as to whether the person's charged. We subpoena people to court. Sometimes people don't want to come to court, but we subpoena them. They don't have a choice. And so the victim is more in a driver's seat in neighborhood court. One of the challenges we have is refining that process. We have lessons learned from the conferences we did. We're improving. We're also trying to establish how we get the victim input and thoughts into a conference if the victim doesn't want to come and participate. That may be further victimization from their point of view of having to actually go and meet with the person that harmed them. They may not want to do that. They may not want to take the time out of their lives to do that. That's their choice. But how do we get their thought, their identification, what are the harms to them into the conference process? So we're working on doing that better. And
you are the one who organizes and coordinates this process.
Coordinate a lot of it. We have a very strong group of volunteers. The board recognized a number of them by name in a resolution that was passed on the 14th of January of this year. And so that group of people has come in and has really helped in developing the program. It's been a collaboration. It hasn't been Chris sitting at the desk, coming up with an outline. It's been Chris meeting with a lot of people who have a lot of really good ideas and listening.
Yes.
And I have to listen to other people, digest that, come to a consensus with them as to what's the best way of making this work. And a lot of them have a mediation background and have a lot more knowledge on restorative justice than I did. I was looking it up about a year ago after I was asked to start this. What is restorative justice? A Google search. That's kind of how I started.
Oh, yes.
And that was
we all start with Google, don't we?
And then I was meeting with people in the community that were interested in restorative justice and wanted to see restorative justice be introduced into our criminal justice system, and then creating collaboration and take with them. And so I actually think you might want to invite some of our facilitators from that group sometime to talk to them about the process.
Well, that's certainly a possibility, yes. Well, we don't have too much time, but I really wanted to ask you, Chris, and everybody very quickly, what have been the challenges since the last time we spoke in terms of getting volunteers or too much work, not enough pizza?
One of the challenges that we saw from our first recruitment and training is that we needed to get younger. Most of our offenders are late teens, 19, 18, early 20s. And we have a lot of panelists my age and older, and it's really important to get a younger perspective. And so it was a concentrated effort to recruit on campus at UC Davis to get student involvement. A lot of the perspectives that we have as to what the harms are and how to make things right come from an older perspective. And so getting a younger, injection of younger thoughts and perspectives was important. And I remember one that Catherine did. There was a noise complaint, and the girl was in the Drake apartments. And she thought it was someone who lived in one of the homes near the Drake apartments. And Catherine goes, well, no, I live in the Drake apartments.
Yeah, I live there, I knew.
And I know for a fact that it's hard to hear the noise outside of the apartment, so it's probably one of your neighbors in the apartment complex that called the police. Another perspective that I wasn't expecting, but I hear a lot, is from a number of students. I go to UC Davis. I don't want to be perceived as a party school. And when you, as a UC Davis student, get drunk, do something, your actions impact me and the perception of the public on my school, and I don't like that. And so, and also they had different, suggestions on how to avoid problems for noise complaints. Again, we have within the realm of age, in the student age, we have older students. So they have more experience.
Well, the perennial graduate students too.
We have some graduate students, but we have older students who have a perspective on how to avoid problems in the community.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm afraid this is all the time we have left today. It went very quickly. It was very interesting. So, Chris Bulkeley, Catherine Stobie, and Jonathan
Baldauf.
Baldauf.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to see this program again, you can go and log on to our website, dctv.davismedia.org. And while you're there, you might want to look at some of our other interesting programs. I also would like to thank our wonderful tech crew. We have Yana and Terry and Daniel and, of course, Diane. And thank you so much for watching from all of us here at Davis Media Access. Good night, and see you next time. You've been watching in the studio.